Welcome to Echo 315, Study Session 11, Capital Budgeting under Rationing, Inflation and Risk. Introduction. Having examined the payback period and accounting rate of return methods of investment in Study Session 9, and the net present value and internal rate of return methods in Study Session 10, we will explore capital budgeting decisions under the situation of capital rationing, inflation, and risk. The profitability index method of investment appraisal is used to evaluate capital budgeting under the situation of capital rationing. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Explain the concept of cost-benefit ratio. 2. Discuss capital rationing. 3. Distinguish between money cash flow and real cash flow. 4. Discuss the methods of incorporating risk in project analysis. Profitability index. Profitability index, also called a benefit cost ratio of a project, is calculated as the present value of net cash flow divided by initial outlay. That is, profitability index equals PV of benefit over cost. The decision rule is to accept project with profitability index greater than 1 and reject those with profitability index less than 1. For mutually exclusive project, accept project with the highest profitability index. The profitability index will yield the same decision with the NPV method. Capital rationing. Capital rationing is a situation in which a firm is unable to accept all projects which are apparently profitable because of a limited amount of fund. It is concerned with the problem of selecting the mix of acceptable projects that provides the highest overall NPV. The profitability index is used widely in ranking projects competing for limited funds. Capital budgeting and inflation. Inflation is the rise in the average price of goods and services. It is the fall in purchasing power of money. For the purpose of a project appraiser, inflation can be divided into general and specific. General inflation is an increase in the average price of all goods and services in an economy. In Nigeria, we use changes in consumer price index to measure general inflation. In project evaluation, general inflation affects both the cash flows and the discount rates. Specific inflation is the change in prices of the various elements that make up the project you are evaluating. For example, sales prices, labor costs, transportation charges, etc. Specific inflation affects only the cash flow of the project. Inflation and cash flow. We can distinguish between money cash flow and real cash flow. Money cash flows are the actual amount of cash flow, that is, the cash flows in nominal terms. Real cash flow, on the other hand, has to do with the purchasing power equivalent of the actual amount of cash flow. It is money cash flow discounted for the effect of changing price level. You will convert the nominal cash flow to real cash flow as follows. Real cash flows equals nominal cash flow divided by 1 plus inflation in bracket to power n. Inflation and discount rates. Like cash flow, we can also distinguish between money discount rate and real discount rate. A money discount rate or money cost of capital measures the actual discount rate in terms of actual money. It is the discount rate in nominal value. Real discount rate, on the other hand, measures the discount rate in constant price level terms. The relationship between money and real discount rate can be expressed as follows. 1 plus money rate equals bracket 1 plus real rate times bracket 1 plus inflation rate. Thus, you can obtain the real discount rate as real rate equals 1 plus money rate all in bracket times 1 plus inflation rate in bracket minus 1. Risk analysis. Risk analysis is important in making capital investment decisions because of large amount of capital involved and long-term nature of the investment being considered. The higher the risk associated with a proposed project, the greater the rate of return that must be earned on the project to compensate for that risk. The absolute risk of a project is measured by the standard deviation, while the relative risk is measured by the coefficient of variation. The formula for measuring these risks are as follows. Absolute risk equals square root of summation AI, that is mean of A squared times PI. Methods of incorporating risk in project analysis. Some of the common methods of incorporating risk in capital budgeting are described below. Probability distribution. In this case, you use the given probability distribution to compute the expected cash inflows of the asset. Risk-adjusted discounting rate. Under this method, you adjust the cost of capital upward as projects become riskier. This is based on the assumption that investors demand higher return for riskier projects. Certainty equivalent. This method is based on the concept of utility theory. You will convert the risky cash flows to its certainty equivalent by multiplying it by the certainty equivalent coefficient. Simulation. This is frequently called Monte Carlo simulation. You have to construct a probability distribution for each of the important variables affecting the project's cash flow. This usually requires the use of computer. Sensitivity analysis. Under this method, you will calculate the sensitivity of the NPV to a small change in each of the variables. You may calculate, for example, sensitivity of NPV to sales volume and initial outlay. Decision tree. Under this method, you use graphical method to show the sequence of possible outcomes. A capital budgeting tree would show the cash flow and NPV of the project under different possible circumstances. Summary. In this study session, you learned that the profitability index of a project is calculated as the present value of net cash flow divided by initial outlay. Capital rationing is a situation in which a firm is unable to accept all projects which are apparently profitable because of a limited amount of fund. In project evaluation, general inflation affects both the cash flow and the discount rate. The higher the risk associated with a proposed project, the greater the rate of return that must be earned on the project to compensate for that risk. Some of the common methods of incorporating risk in capital budgeting include probability distribution, risk-adjusted discounting rate, certainty equivalent, simulation, sensitivity analysis, and decision tree. This is the end of study session 11. Thanks for listening.